So in this video, I wanted to take a look at how I like to set up and use Impact whenever I use it in my productions, because anytime I use it, I always like to set it up the same way. So we've got a track over here that I did with a Toronto-based artist. It was something that was done for social media. I don't know if it was TikTok or Instagram or what it ended up being, but it was basically a mashup. I don't have rights to play the lead vocals, but I think I can leave the backgrounds in there. So I have an instance of Impact. Actually, let's play it quickly. Okay, so just a really cool groove. She came to me with, I think, a guitar track and maybe the bass was recorded. We pulled in some loops, laid down some drums, recorded some vocals. It was just a really quick session that we did. So if we take a look at Impact, I basically just dragged in some samples that I like. Now, the starting point when I'm working with Impact, especially if you're producing on the fly with an artist, is that I keep it as simple as possible. Usually everything's coming out the main outs, and I would probably use, for basic gain staging, I would probably use the gain knob here for these individual pads just to get everything kind of sounding balanced. But the minute I need to do anything discrete for any of these signals, like I don't know what's on here. For example, on this perk element over here, we have a Pro Q7, or sorry, a Pro Q3 that's doing something. And then for the kick, we have some EQ that's happening as well. And then also I have an instance of Vitamin on this as well. Then I immediately will split up the channels. And the way that I do this is quite simply by coming to the bottom right-hand corner and choosing a discrete stereo output. Now, the minute you do this, you will automatically get a new channel that shows up in your console in Studio One. And you can also do this by clicking the instrument rack. And if I drop down this over here, let's say I wanted Impact 7. Notice that I just clicked that and notice that that became available. Well, let's hide that. We're not going to use that. So a couple thoughts on this. First of all, I think this is just a good habit to get into. Secondly, you'll also notice that with respect to my session over here, I have my channels, my kick, my snare, and my perk over here, but I also have a track for them. Now, this is something that I actually set up very specifically because I want to be able to have, for example, my console closed, and I want to be able to click this in the arrange view and have access to the sends and all the inserts. So let's take a real quick look at how we do this. And then this goes to my last stage, which would be archiving and printing as well. I'm going to bring in, let's say 7, 8, and 9. Let's assume that there was some routing done to these tracks. Now, the way that we get a parameter to automate, a real quick shortcut, is if I just click it and I choose Option or Alt-A, then we get an automation lane that's nested on the main parent track. But this isn't actually what I want. I want automation lanes that are separate. So the way we do this is we click it, and then we drag this little hand, and I'm going to drag it down here to its own automation track. Now it creates a separate track. Now I'm going to click this one. I'm going to do the same thing again. This is going to go underneath here. Make sure that I don't accidentally put it in a folder. I will click this one, and this will be the last one I do, and this will go underneath here, right in between. So now what we have is we have channels, or sorry, tracks that are actually linked to channels. Now, if you don't want these, you could just put them in a folder and hide them. You could put all of these in a folder together and hide it so that you don't ever have to see them, or you could collapse them. I come from Pro Tools, and I'm just so used to having a track to channel parity, but I still like the ability to sequence all of my drums on one instrument part like this, or one pattern part, depending on how I like to work. Now, the benefit here, like I said, is when your console is closed and you're working in a single view setup, that we have the inspector open, we can see our inserts and sends, and we have an actual fader in the inspector that's linked to the fader in the channel in the console. And then the last step for this, once I'm done everything, in fact, we'll just remove these because I don't need them, is the exporting stems is really simple. Now, when you're exporting stems, you don't have to create tracks in the arrange section of Studio One to export the channels. But from here, we would just go to Song, and we would export stems. And then all I would need to do is, I'm just going to click None. I would just come down here and say, what do I want to export? Okay, well, kick, snare, and clap is all I'm using. I would decide whether I wanted a file name prefix. I would decide the format, the resolution, and sample rate. I'd have to define a loop range or use the song start and song end markers. And then I would always choose the option to import to track. because that's going to bring them right back in as audio files. And then I could basically hide and disable the instrument, the Impact XT instrument, because I no longer need it, because I will have the audio files. They will be rendered versions if I had any plug-in processing, if I had decapitate or any saturation, any EQ. They will be rendered, and that's a better state for me to archive this actual song. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.